Hello and welcome to this session. We are going to cover very quickly how to create a golden image from a existing installation. Now today I'm going to use basically my Windows 2016 evaluation version of Windows. I mean it's a 180-day license, but I'm going to show you first of all that you can reuse those, and secondly that there's a reason for creating a golden image or image template as it would be. Now, the most common reason for this is that you don't want to necessarily go through all the steps repeatedly for things like patching, installation of programs. So anything that you want to be part of your base operating system installation, such as, let's say, Office or antivirus or other tools that you want to be present there from moment one. If you don't have a full-blown installation and deployment system, this is a very good way of doing it, particularly if you're working with a lab environment that you've got set up at home on something like VirtualBox. I mean, there are plenty of other hypervisors and things that could do this better, but if you don't have spare hardware and a lot of money to play with, this is probably the best option for you. So I'm going to go ahead and say that we've got my 2016. What we're going to do is we're going to reset the security identifier, because one of the challenges that you have is when you're playing with domains and other types of security identifiers, the local security identifier then conflicts if you're using lots of snapshots and images. So we basically are going to reset it so that when it starts up, it creates a fresh one each time. So at that point, when it's creating the fresh one, or just before it creates the fresh one, that's when we're going to create our image. So when it shuts down, we create a golden image of that, so that when we start up, we get a unique one each and every time. The other thing you're going to quickly notice, the reason I've got this is I've got a couple of install scripts. They build my Active Directory, join the computer to the domain, depending on what I want to do in my lab environment. And these run very quickly, so it saves me going through all the steps. Also, I've patched it to the current patch level, so I don't have to spend, and I think it was about 40 minutes of downloading and actually installing those patches. So next time I can avoid that and just quickly copy the machine across. And I did a run the other day and it took about 3 minutes opposed to an hour. So to that extent, we have two commands. First of all, you can clean up your image if you've already been using it. So you can actually create a golden image out of your existing one. And that's using this lovely command here. So you have the Windows installation manager, and you're telling it that you want to do online. You want to do an image cleanup, start up components, and reset to base. Now this won't affect other things that you've installed like Office. It won't affect scripts or locations that you have on the disk. It's just going to impact the base operating system and pretend that you're completely brand new. Equally, I don't need this because I haven't got anything on here other than my scripts. And also this will take some 10-15 minutes to run at least. So do it once when you're creating the image, not afterwards, because otherwise you'll spend literally more time than you did with the Windows updates. The other one is to change the security identifier. The security identifier in this case we want to change for a couple of reasons. One of which is that I actually plan to use Active Directory in my images, so I can't have both domain controllers trying to use the same account. It's just not going to end well. So in this case we have a generalized switch, we have an OOBE switch, and the all-important mode VM switch. So this is going to tell it that it is a VM machine. I want you to be able to clone it, etc., etc. And there's one more switch, which is, now there's two options. You can have reboot, but I don't want to reboot because I want to take it as an image one in that state. So I'm going to opt for the shutdown. And I'm just going to show you how quick and easy this is. So just note the syspref is in the system32 directory, so you will either need to go to that directory or type it out. And I don't need this, so I'm going to close that out of the way. You can see the syspref is working. This is going to take a couple of minutes, and then ta-da, it's going to shut down. So I now have my machine ready to do my export on. So in this case, I'm now going to quickly go export application. I select my 2016. This is where I'm going to create my golden file version. I could create it in a couple of different ones, but I'm going to go for one. I'm going to go next. I'm going to be fine with the location for the moment. I can enter product, vendor, etc., description, so I can turn around and say, right, this is my Windows 2016 clean patch. And this might be important to you to do this on a regular basis when new patches are released. So maybe you will redo your image once every 3-4 months when it's a significant number of patches different. And so it's good to actually put what was the current date or the patch level at the time. Even better if there's a service pack released between now and then, apply the service pack, update the image, do this again, and it's perfect. So I run the export. As you can see, this takes a few minutes. So that while that's busy exporting, I'm going to show you a couple of commands. Within VirtualBox, which is what I'm using, you have the program folders or wherever you've installed VirtualBox to. Then you have the VBox Manager. Now this is a very useful command for importing these image files. And if you use this at command line, so you can then import your golden image and then you can start to manipulate it. So as an example, here's one I made earlier. So I've got my VirtualBox. In this case, it was a Windows 7 image imported. So this is where the file would be. So name the file, the directory, wherever it's located, and I do my import. Then I've got here a modify name because I want to be able to change the name. Now, you may not do that if you're just working with one VM at a time. In my case, it's usually 2, 3, and as you can see, sometimes in groups. As a consequence, I want to be able to name them Node 1, Node 2, Node 3, etc., etc. So in this case, in telling it basically, this is the default name, rename it to, so that I can do that. And I can put a custom generator on there or a batch file that's going to rename each one in turn. The next part of that is I can do the modify. So I can then take that image, and in this case, I'm going to apply some network parameters to it. So I want to use the NAT network and then the name of my natted network. And so to give you an example how that looks, you would normally have something like network 1, network 2, network 3, network 4. So you can have up to 4 networks. I'm telling it that I want to use the NAT network. You've also got the option for the bridge network or the host network. Again, depends on which type of network you're working with. And then you can assign that. So this is also a very useful parameter in the modify VM. Last but not least, and this is a very useful thing, if you have, let's say, 2, 3 images you want to work with, taking the first one from the golden image is great. But if you haven't started that image, so you don't need to run syspref again or anything else because it's still not started, you can then take a clone of that VM, which saves you a bit more time, having now modified all the network parameters and other things that you want, and then quickly go original image, new image name, and then the register and all mode. And this is the all mode basically resets things like the MAC address on the network card so you don't get conflicts. And at that point, you have potentially 1, 2, 3, as many as you need. And I have, in my case, I'm going to put a 4 switch in here so that I can enter an input. So it will only ask me one question: how many VMs do I want? I put a numerical value in there, and then based on the numerical value, it will run this through and create as many copies with unique names as I need. So you might have Windows 2016 node and then the unique number, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. When it boots up, the Windows will create a new security identifier for itself. It will randomly generate a Windows name for itself. I could actually cheat and have it do it based on a computation by my side. I do have scripts for that, but frankly, default random names are fine. I usually don't bother to rename them until I'm joining them to Active Directory and I need to make it more memorable for me. And that's it. That's how you can turn VirtualBox in the space of 2 hours into a perfectly good running lab. So what I would suggest is, if you have not worked with VirtualBox, is go find your program files directory, find the VBox manager, use the /forward key, and I'm just going to give you a very quick example of how this looks. And I can put the slash, and you can see here is a list of all of the possible commands. And you have network metrics, you have guest filters, USB filters, anything that you can do from the GUI you can do in this.